yesterday. For, for those of you, so welcome and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. For those of you expecting Helen tonight, Helen had hip surgery only yesterday. So if you're watching Helen, we wish you the very best and a speedy recovery. For those of you who are new to Wharfedale Nats webinars, we encourage questions and we'd like you to pop them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, not the chat, that's the Q&A. And we'd like you to put them in during the talk. So at the end, Tate will be able to ask Nyree some of the questions you've posed. Now, it really does give me great pleasure to introduce Nyree. I've known Nyree and her husband David for almost 10 years, and Nyree is our exceptional butterfly recorder, not just writing her report for the annual review, but leading frequent butterfly walks and activities throughout the summer. They really are well worth attending. I had a chat with Nyree last week just to have a few words before tonight's event, and I asked where it all started, and it happened quite by chance. Nyree has always had a love of the countryside and the outdoor, really given to her by her parents, Carmen and Fred, who are both Wharfedale Nats members. And then 20 years ago, in 2006, they're out walking in the Washburn Valley, and they bump into Peter and Anne Riley. And Peter was the president at the time. And Peter encouraged them to join the Wharfedale Naturalists. So then followed an interest in butterflies, encouraged by David Howson and also Paul Millard. And from then on, moths as well, with the encouragement of Peter Riley. Nyree is also a very good botanist as well. So this talk combines her knowledge and love of both butterflies and plants. So I'd like to hand over to Nyree to take center stage and tell us about butterflies and their associated plants. Many thanks, Nyree.
Should I screen share now then?
Yes, please.
You hear me, yeah.
That looks perfect.
Can you see, is that okay?
That is fine.
Okay, we'll get going then. Hello everybody. This talk, it originally started with an inquiry from the Bradford Botany person who deals with all their winter talks. He knew, obviously, I'm a member of Bradford Botany, but he also knew that we're exceptionally keen on butterflies, and we wondered if there was a talk that could like combine the two. And first we were sort of thinking a bit more about, like, you know, the fruit plants, and when we talk about fruit plants for butterflies, we're actually talking about what the caterpillars eat. So I sort of started thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, I can probably like think of something. And then I thought, you know, some of the fruit plants are quite like uninteresting things, a mixture of grasses, nettles, things like that, not the prettiest of flowers. So I thought, well, I've got loads of pictures of butterflies like nectaring on different flowers. So to bring the botany into that, I've also got lots of nice pictures of butterflies nectaring on various different flowers as well. And this talk is not just based in our local area. We'll run through a few sort of quite generalist species, quite common species, things that are found in our area, but then we're also going to move on to a few species that do have specialist fruit plants. And we'll be heading up to Scotland, and we'll be heading down south, mainly Isle of Wight, and places where we've visited when we've been down there. So this first slide is a small heath. It is quite common in our recording area. It tend to find it more in the uplands. The fruit plant is a variety of grasses. It doesn't have one specific thing, but it was just a species that didn't feature anywhere else in the talk, and I thought this was a particularly nice shot of one. They always rest with their wings closed, and you see that orange, but it's not a really brilliant orange, and it is on the underside of the wing. But I just love the little furry body of this species. Ah, it's not moving on. Oh, slide's not moving on.
Can you move it on manually in the bottom left-hand corner? Perhaps not.
I'll maybe try shutting the presentation down and opening it again. I don't know if that will work.
Okay, just take your time, Nyree.
I'm not sure what to do to. Oh, it's come up at the top. I don't know why it's not moving on. It did do when we.
Can you use the arrow keys up and down to move it on?
That's what I was using.
So,
Are you in PowerPoint?
No. Yes.
Be able to go. Remote control, slide. Just hover on slide control.
Slide control. Let's try that.
Or go on to no. Assign slide control privileges. It might be worth if you share it to Ian. Maybe.
Where's that?
Here.
Oh no.
No, you don't have to do that. Share. You could go.
Can I come out of sharing and try go back into sharing?
You could do that. Just click on the red stop share.
Hang on, I'm just gonna. I don't know what I've done with that to get out of that. Oh.
Don't panic, Nyree, just take your time. Yeah, that looks good. That's a new slide.
Yeah, but they're not moving. It's not moving on from that one now.
Actually, click down here onto
It's
this
bottom, yeah, bottom left hand.
Right, yeah, that's working.
I would use that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Don't worry. Don't
Right,
worry.
so obviously we're wanting to include plants and things, and one thing I've always said to people, obviously, as Ian said, I do have an interest in botany as well, and I do like nice, pretty plants. I can't get overly excited about all the grasses and sedges and things. So I've always said that sites that are nice for flowers are also nice for butterflies. So this is Sun Lane Nature Reserve at Burley. And there, you know, it looks fairly green on that shot. As you can see, a little bit of Medicranesbill on the left there. But then just go up a little bit on the path and you get a colour like that. So we've got Bird's Foot trefoil, red and white clover. Again, more red clover, Bird's Foot trefoil, bit of meadowsweet on the left there. And there's certain areas of that reserve that at times of year it's just a carpet of red clover. And the others, which is not particularly a plant that butterflies do use, but it's just ever so pretty and mixed in with all the other things. And Bird's Foot trefoil, this again still at Sun Lane. Bird's Foot trefoil is the food plant for a number of butterflies and moths, and we'll see some of those later on, the most common one being the common blue, and we do have common blue at Sun Lane. So here's our first butterfly, nice peacock, probably something that you're all familiar with. Very pretty, lovely big peacock eye spots. Something that you probably, most people would recognise, quite big. Comes out quite early in the year because it overwinters as an adult. And the fruit plant for that one is nettles. So these are some peacock caterpillars, little black spiky things. They always tend to be in a big group like this, and the idea is that there's safety in numbers, so if a bird or something comes along it won't be able to eat the whole lot. It might tell its friends or it might come back, but as they will move along a little bit, and they're also quite black and spiky, so again make them a bit unpalatable. And then we've got small tortoise shell, slightly smaller than a peacock, but again something I'm sure you're all familiar with. Another nice spring butterfly, very pretty. Here it's on yarrow. And again, caterpillars feed on nettles. So these are the caterpillars of a small tortoise shell. And again, they go for safety in numbers, and these are slightly more camouflaged than a peacock. And another lovely spring butterfly, the comma. That brilliant orange on the upper side, and then if you on the underside shot, you can see that little comma marking, which is where it gets its name from. And it's unbelievably camouflage if it's on the right kind of leaves. You back end of the year in autumn, you get it sitting on brambles, likes to feed on the rotting blackberries, really soft fruit, and you'll often see it on that, and it'll just shut its wings up and you actually think it's flown away. So we're going to move on. I've tended to try and put the plant species first, so some of you who are like more into these things might be trying to guess the species. So here we've got on the left, we've got purging buckthorn, which tends to grow on the more calcareous areas up in the dales, places like Grasswood, sites up Littondale. And then on the right, we've got a single leaf of alder buckthorn, and that grows in places around here. We've got it at Sun Lane Nature Reserve. It grows around farm. This is actually a plant at Fearnley, quite close to where the fish farm is. And the two little eggs that are sticking up are the eggs of our next species, which is the brimstone butterfly. Again, it's one of the early spring species. It is one butterfly that they do say you could see in any month of the year because it overwinters as an adult. So if it comes a bit warmer, it might come out of hibernation a bit too soon. Beautiful, quite big butterfly, unmistakable. Our only really big yellow butterfly. And this is a caterpillar. And this one goes for camouflage. I hope you can all see the one in the centre of the screen. And it was pointed out when I did this talk for the Bradford Botany by Alan Schofield. I says, oh, there's a second one on there. And there is actually one at the side of the screen there as well. I think these were actually taken at Wharfedale Nature Reserve on a Wharfedale Nats walk there. And the orange tip, again, something that I would think pretty much everybody is familiar with the male, with its beautiful orange wings. Some people don't realise that the female actually doesn't have the orange, so that's the female on the right. It's a slightly different sort of shape to the other whites. It's a bit more rounded around the wing edges, and it tends to be, I think, a bit more of a dusky grey colour, a little bit more blurred in its markings, not particularly sharp black markings. And again, the one of that comes out quite early in the year. We're seeing it in April. And one of the main fruit plants for the caterpillars is, I've always known it as milkmaid or cuckoo flower. And here we've got one on that. And here you see the beautiful underside, which is totally different to any of the other whites. If you see one of these with its wings shut, there's absolutely no doubt it's an orange tip. And here's the cuckoo flower or milkmaid, and you can actually see in the centre some little orange eggs of the orange tip. People love that trick when we go out on walks in spring. We're always looking at this plant, and people are amazed when we say we're looking for butterfly eggs, and you've got a pretty good chance of finding some and being able to show them to people. So here we've got a mating pair sitting on the fruit plant, so that's handy for a bit of egg laying once they've finished. And another fruit plant for the orange tip is this, the garlic mustard. So I just put that in because it is actually sat on garlic mustard. This is actually a male because you can just see the orange coloration through that mottled green. And this plant is, it's one that's found at Nid Gorge, and it is a cardamine. And this is the coral root bittercress. It's I'm not even sure if it is native and not really to this part of the world. We think it originally came from Harlow Car Gardens area because there's quite a bit round there and it travels down the river. So this is actually at Nid Gorge. And again, it's a male, but we did wonder when we saw it and it being the same family of the cardamine, if it is actually a possible fruit plant for the orange tip as well. I've never found any eggs on it though. And I just put this in because I thought it was quite pretty. These two were actually taken in lockdown in 2020 and it was just on the roadside verge by the entrance to the caravan park where we live. And we've just gone for our little daily exercise. And what I put these in for is because it was just the way that they're mating, but they're actually going between the flowers of the bluebell. Here we've got a speckled wood. I just popped this in really because it is a very common species in our area, and if you're in any woodland, it is a butterfly that you will see flying when it's not particularly sunny. It don't mind a bit of shade, as the name suggests, speckled wood, camouflage in shady areas. And another reason that I put this in as well is jumped on its own then. So this is the underside of the speckled wood. And it really foxed us one day. We saw one of these when we were out one day up Mount Fewston Reservoir, and we both looked at it, me and David, and we said, what is it? And it took us ages before we realised that it was actually a speckled wood. You do sometimes get like these like lovely hints of like a sort of a burgundy red colour, which you can just about see around the edge of this one. But again, once it shuts its wings, pretty camouflage. So we'll move on to a couple of skippers now. Small skipper, large skipper, again, both very common in our area. Fruit plants is just a variety of grasses. I put this shot in just to show the differences really, because small skippers, there's not a big difference in size. They maybe are slightly smaller and they're very plain. The main difference is it's very plain, no markings. And then if you look at the large skipper, you can see a little checkerboard markings on it, and you get that on the upper wing as well. So they are quite different, but you do need a close look. One thing I maybe should say as well is we always use binoculars when we're out walking looking for butterflies. Binoculars really handy because obviously these are fairly lively insects and they're obviously more active on sunny days. So when you do see them, they're quite often pretty active. Say on a dull day, if they just go down in the grass, shut the wings, like saw with the comma and the speckled wood, they're just almost invisible. Unless you see something like a comma with its wings actually open, you'd struggle to find one. And we've got Red Admiral. So again, it's a very common species in the UK, but it is actually a migrant. And it's only in the last sort of few years, really, that they actually thought that it could overwinter in the UK. Before that, it wasn't actually able to survive our winters. So it was only a migrant, but it is now classed as a breeding species, but probably more breeding in the south. But some years we get big influxes coming in from the continent. And this is another one that uses nettle. And some of the species that come in from the continent, they do actually breed in the UK, but they'll come in the spring from the continent and they'll breed and have a second brood that we see later in the year. And then the adults from that brood, some of them migrate back to the continent and some of them obviously don't survive. And another one that does this is the painted lady, comes in from Europe. Here we've got one on Northern Marsh Orchid. This actually uses thistles as a fruit plant for its caterpillars, so there's no shortage of them. And it is well known, this species, to have like mass influx years, about once every 10 years. And you'll just get thousands and thousands of them. But if they get ideal conditions on the continent, they probably just don't bother coming across. I mean, why bother wasting that energy flying across if they got suitable habitat over there? So it's probably really dry years when fruit plants get desiccated and things like that, that they just keep traveling, looking until they find somewhere that's got some suitable fruit plants for them. So we're moving on to our next species now. So this is sorrel. Again, very common in the grassland. If you actually look in grassland, you can find it in most fields. And that is the fruit plant for the small copper. So this is a similar size butterfly to the small heath that was on that first slide, but this one, it'll either land with its wings open or shut. And in this case, the orange colour is on the upper wing more than the underwing. And it's got much more distinct markings as well, with those little black spots. Very pretty little butterfly. You see it all over here. It's just on common heather. And here we've got a mating pair, so you can see the underwing there. So quite often when you see the hindwing of a butterfly, they'll shut the forewing down behind the hindwing. So that orange that you can see there on the forewing will actually disappear altogether behind the hindwing, and that would just look brown then. And here they're on ragwort, and I found ragwort is a really good fruit plant. It's not a fruit plant, it's a really good plant that they like to nectar on. And if you get late in the year, even into November, you can quite often see a small copper sitting on a ragwort. And here we've got holly. So some of you have probably already guessing. So the next species, it actually has two broods, and in spring it feeds on holly, and in the second brood they lay their eggs onto ivy, and it is of course the holly blue. So this is a female with the black round the edges. The male would be all blue, but it's a much duskier blue than the common blue. In our recording area, we only have common blue and holly blue. They're the only two that we do have. We will see some other blues in this slideshow, but the holly blue and the common blue are the only two that we have in Wharfedale. If you see a blue butterfly and it's in a more urban environment in your garden, something like that, the chances are it's holly blue. Common blue will only be found where there's bird's foot trefoil. So unless you've got that in your garden or it's nearby, it's almost certainly going to be holly blue. Holly blue also tend to fly really high up in the trees. You see a little bit of blue away up in the trees. It's probably going to be holly blue anyway. Common blue tend to stick closer to the ground. And here we've got the underside. So again, it's just quite a silvery blue, quite plain. No orange on it, no brown on it, just a silvery blue. Here it's on hemp agrimony. This is Technut Sun Lane actually, and if you can remember the underside of this, the holly blue, because we'll move on to some other blues and you can see the differences quite plainly. If you ever in our area and you see a blue and you get a chance to see the underside, you can tell immediately whether it's holly blue or common blue, because they're totally different underneath. So common bird's foot trefoil, I mentioned earlier that is the fruit plant for quite a lot of things, and the main thing that everybody or most people maybe know is that it is the fruit plant for the common blue. So you can see this is a lot bluer than the holly blue. This is a male, so it's blue all over. Very pretty butterfly. I mean, they can be such a brilliant blue. When we were kids and we were up the dale, we sometimes used to say, oh, there's an Adonis blue there. And then, of course, when I've got more into butterflies, I've realised that Adonis blue in Wharfedale would be like pretty unusual. It wouldn't have come on its own accord. So here we've got a female common blue, so she's still got a bit of blue on us. They have that to a greater or lesser degree. And if you look around the edges of the wings, you've got the orange luneals there, and they have a black spot, and then they have a little bit of white around the black. And that's one of the differences we'll find when we get to the northern brown Argus. So the common blue is a bit more strongly marked around the edges. And these are common blues mating, and I've just put a little red mark around those two marks because those two spots on the wings, this is one of the ways to tell the difference between common blue and northern brown Argus. And you'll see I've marked it when we get to northern brown Argus, so you can see that the spots are the other way around. Instead of following the wing edge, they're at right angles to what these are. I just put this in because I liked it. It's a mating pair with an extra male, thinking that he'll try and see if he can push his way in. And here we're on common knapweed. That was taken in our area. That was actually taken at Duck Street Quarry at Greenhow. I've just popped in, this is clouded yellow. It's our only other yellow butterfly. It's smaller than the brimstone. It's very, very rare in our area. It is a migrant. It doesn't really survive our winters, although possibly right in the south of England. Again, its caterpillars use the trefoils, bird's foot trefoil being one of them, but it will use other like plants from the clover family as well. This one was actually taken at Ripon City Wetlands, and I mentioned earlier about sometimes migrants, they'll some come over in spring and then they can actually breed in this country, and some did actually breed at Ripon City Wetlands a few years ago, and this was taken there. But a couple of years ago we had at least 2 of them at Sun Lane Nature Reserve, and they also behave totally differently to a brimstone. They whiz about like maniacs, like when they're really low to the ground, chasing after them, trying to see them land. It's like a scene from Benny Hill. Whereas the brimstones tends to be way up in the air all over. You know, it will be lower down, but it flies quite high up. And I've sneaked 1 or 2 moths into this presentation as well because they're day flying moths and they're very pretty. So this is a 6-spot burnet, and that uses bird's foot trefoil as well. Here it's on a dandelion, and that's at Sun Lane. So every single species we've seen so far up to that burnet have all been recorded in our area. In fact, they've all been recorded at Sun Lane Nature Reserve. So they're all things that can be seen quite easily without too much effort, even if you're not particularly mobile. Sun Lane's nice and easy to get to, not too long a walk. So we're moving up the dale now. So this is Lytton Dale, bottom end of Lytton Dale. That's Hawkswick Moor in the background. We're at the other side of the dale, on some private land where we have permission to go and do butterfly monitoring, botany. We've been there with both the Wharfedale Naturalists and Bradford Botany on botany meetings, but it's also a nice site for butterflies. And you can possibly see some little yellow flowers speckled about in the grass, and that is common rock rose. And common rock rose is the fruit plant for the northern brown Argus, which we have up the dales in quite a lot of different sites. So that's a bit of a close-up of the actual flower and also the leaf, and I've circled the leaf because on the leaf there's an egg, and they always tend to lay their eggs smack bang down that midriff, right in the middle of the leaf, and they always lay on the upper surface as well, which is quite handy. And again, this is another one that you can quite easily find the eggs for. Again, it's something we do on botany groups, is hunt for eggs. And especially like botanists always got the hand lens with them, and if you've got a hand lens with you, then you can have a look at them, and they just look like a little miniature golf ball or a little pitted surface on them. So here we've got the northern brown Argus, no blue at all on it, and if you look at those orange, the lunules around the edges, they've got a bit of black there, but there's no white, so not quite as marked as a common blue. And it's sitting on bird's foot trefoil here, but it does use common rock rose. So here's the underside, and those two spots that I showed you on the common blue. On the common blue, they're like running along the wing edge, whereas on the northern brown Argus, they're like they're the other way on like that, going in towards the centre of the wing. It can be really tricky to see it. It took me years. I'd be sending photos to Paul and saying, oh, is it a common blue or is it a northern brown? I do actually have some sheets that Butterfly Conservation Yorkshire did, which show the differences on the upper wing and the underwing. So if anybody's interested, I've got a document that I could email you. I've got a few printed out, but not too many. I can bring some to the recorder's evening. And another moth, but I really like this moth, and it's quite a rare moth, but it's quite common in our area. It's seen at quite a lot of different sites. It's up at Bastow Wood, it's up on Hawkswick Moor. We've seen it up top end of Littondale, up above Kettlewell, and this is a Sisters Forester. And although it is on Birchfoot trefoil there, again, the fruit plant is common rock rose, same as the northern brown Argus. And it's a stunning little moth. There's lovely metallic sheen to it, ever so pretty. Day flying, obviously, you can see it there. So now we're moving on to some more. So here we've got oak, and we're moving on to hair streaks now. So this is actually the fruit plant for the purple hair streak, and there is actually a purple hair streak on that photo. And here's again why binoculars are handy. So this is that same photo zoomed in, and that's why it's such poor quality, but it's just to show that there is really a butterfly on that shot. And if you scan oak trees with binoculars, you can sometimes find them sat, but we scanned loads of oak trees this July looking for them and didn't find that many. They tend to just be like little tiny butterfly shapes flitting about in the top of oak trees. I'll just move on to the next one because this is a much nicer shot. This is the underside of the purple hair streak. No purple on it at all. You wouldn't even notice that if you hadn't seen it actually come down to land. They come down onto the ground to get minerals and moisture from the ground. So this is the upper wing, and it's a bit of a scruffy thing, this, but to be fair, this is the only one I've ever got a shot of the upper wing of a purple hair streak, because they're usually way up in the top of the trees. You're looking with binoculars. They do say that best time to look for purple hair streak is late afternoon, early evening. That's when they seem to be most active. I don't really know why. It's obviously a bit cooler then, but then you get cooler days in summer as well, when the temperature during the day is probably similar to on an evening on a hot day, so I'm not totally sure. This was actually taken at Strensall Common near York, and we'd actually gone looking. Well, we were on a botany day with the Bradford Botany, but we'd gone early because there's a very, very rare moth at Strensall Common, the dark bordered beauty, and that is its only site in England. And we'd been doing some work parties in winter planting creeping willow and for that species, and I'd just found one and seen one. I'm zooming in and trying to take pictures, and David said, "It's a purple hair streak, it's right next to you, get a picture of it, get a picture of it." He sat right next to you, and I'm saying, no, I might never see a dark bordered beauty ever again, you know, and he's saying it's right next to you, get a picture of it. So I did actually have to turn around and take a few pictures of this as well, and I'm glad, because you can actually see the purple on it. So the next hair streak is the white letter hair streak that feeds on elms. This is wych elm, because a lot of the English elm got decimated with Dutch elm disease, but wych elm is equally attractive. Here's a white letter hair streak on creeping thistle. It's a bit of a scruffy looking thing. This was actually taken at our farm on Poole Bank a few years ago, and just right next to the pen where our dogs lived, and I was just in the field and white letter hair streak. Don't think I ever saw one any other year, and it was obviously a place I went to like very regularly, looked for them. And that is the egg. That was actually taken at Benriding gravel pits. And I think Paul found that. I think again on a Wharfedale Nats walk. And this one's a bit more, it's not quite like the golf ball of the Northern Brown Argus. It's more like a flying saucer and it's quite camouflage as well. And then the other hair streak that we have in our area is the green hair streak. And our area of Wharfedale is one of the best places in Yorkshire to see this species. It loves bilberry. So here we've got one. I've put this shot in because we've got the fruit plant, but there is a butterfly on as well, and it just shows that they can be quite camouflage. So if I move on to an actual butterfly on its own, they are absolutely stunning. I love this little butterfly. I think if people say what's your favourite butterfly, I tend to say green hair streak. It's say all over on Otley Shevin, Burley Moor, Ilkley Moor, Addingham Moor. And this is another species that we do find further up the dale, but further up the dale it changes its fruit plant, so it lays its eggs on rock rose. And Paul actually found an egg up Troller's Gill a couple of years ago. But we know it feeds on rock rose. There's no bilberry on certain sites. We've seen this species at Kilnsea. We've seen it up above Kettlewell, and there it's using rock rose. But it's a beautiful little thing. So here it is on gorse. Gorse is another plant that they say it uses as a fruit plant. And they will tend to, the males like perch like this, and they're like waiting for things to go past, and they'll dash out and attack things. And another reason that this one's in, if you look at the little white markings on the wing, this one's only got white markings on the hind wing, and the forewing looks quite plain. And they do actually say that it's a bit like a fingerprint. Everyone's slightly different. So if I move on to the next one, you can see that this has got little white marks on both its wings. So I mean, not that you'd go to a site where there were loads, but sometimes you do know if you've taken a picture and it is a different one. And here's a mating pair. These are on Otley Shevin. There's a certain place on Otley Shevin you can go to and pretty much guaranteed it on a sunny day in late April, early May. But it's all over on Burley Moor, Ilkley Moor. I popped this one, and this is on green alkanet, and it's a green hair streak, and I put it in just because I thought how camouflage it is, the shape of it against those leaves. It's so camouflage, you know. And people, it took me 2 years to see my first green hair streak when I actually started actively looking for it. And I went on to Otley Shevin 1 year a few times, nice sunny days, never saw one. And then David Howson told me just the right spot to go, and I went and saw this little thing flutter past. It just looked like a bit of a leaf almost. It looked like more like a moth, because although they're this brilliant green on the underside, the upper side is actually brown, and when they're in flight they look brown. You wouldn't think it was a butterfly. When they do land, once you get your eye in, they're also quite small, but they do actually stand out as a different green. And when you start seeing them on the bilberries, you can pick them out quite easily. We've taken quite a lot of people now and shown them, and once you get their eye in, they're quite good at it. I just bobbed this in, another little moth. This is at Sun Lane. This is the moth that people know as the mint moth. It's Pyrosta orata. And this is the actual true mint moth, but it also feeds on marjoram, and here it's on marjoram at Sun Lane, and you can get quite big numbers of it. We can go past this patch of marjoram at Sun Lane on the it's on the little gravel bit near the railway line, if anybody's familiar with Sun Lane, and I know some of you are, and go at the right time of year when this is in flower. And it's ever such a pretty little thing. There are two more Pyrosta species that look very similar to this one, but this is the actual one that they call them, that is really the one they call the mint moth. And here we've got wild thyme, another pretty little plant. grows all over up the dales, likes limestone. And I put this in because this is another Pyrosta moth. This is Pyrosta cingulata. And we found this up on Hawkswick Moor on a track up there, and oh my God, it was hard to photograph. They are so lively and they are so camouflaged. And you see this tiny little thing flitting about and you think you've seen where it lands and you're creeping up on it, and then you're just about to press the shutter on your camera and boom, it's off. And Paul was very excited about when we told him we'd seen this species, and in fact we had to go back another day and take Paul with us. Unfortunately we did find a few, but just some of the day flying moths are equally as pretty as butterflies. Well, nighttime flying moths as well, any moth. So this is a violet. This is just your common dog violet. Violets are well known to be the fruit plant of various fritillaries. So the fritillary we have in our area is this, the dark green fritillary. Most of the fritillaries are a lovely bright orange on the upper wing, and you can sort of see why it gets its name because it's got like a greenish tinge on the underwing. Here it's on Botany, and I think that's probably at Bastow Wood. And then I just popped that one in because I thought it was nice of it. It's almost like it's hugging the thistle. I think they do this sometimes, I think, to like create little pockets of warm air to increase the temperature so that they can be active and fly. Here it's on creeping thistle, and that one's at Kilnsey. It's on Paul's butterfly transect. I know you're watching, Paul. And then this is a marsh violet, so it's much paler colour, not such the purple colour that a lot of people think of as violets. And I've put the one in with the leaf as well because the leaf is different. It's really rounded, like a little bit heart shaped. And this is a really common species up in Scotland, so we're moving up to Scotland now. This is the pearl bordered fritillary, and again very similar on the upper wing to the dark green fritillary. Here it's on a young birch sapling, and this was taken not far from Fort William. And this is the same species, pearl bordered fritillary, and then we've got the undersurface. And the main reason you can tell this apart from small pearl bordered, because if you look at the edge, I will use my cursor here, I don't know if you can see that very well, but around the edge of these white markings, the outside of it is a gingery red colour on the pearl bordered fritillary, and it's also got this big white cell in the middle. And another thing that one person said of us, this is, oh, it's the duck fritillary, and you might be able to get that in the middle there's a duck's head, and it really does look like a duck's head with the white cell being the beak of the duck. But this is the less common of the two of the pearl bordered, so the lesser pearl bordered, this is a more common, and you can see those white markings around the edge of the wing there, the little chevrons. They're edged with black on the small pearl bordered fritillary. So here we've got one feeding on birchfoot trefoil. So again, birchfoot trefoil, loads of species use it. If they don't use it as a food plant, you'll have already seen from these slides, there's all sorts of things that like to nectar on it. And that's the underside of the small pearl bordered. I quite like that one. So it's just on a little dead bracken frond there. Oh, that's my thing now. Small pearl bordered fritillary on marsh thistle. In Scotland, there's loads of marsh thistles, and we used to find if you got a sunny day late May, you can pretty much find the small pearl bordered fritillaries. They seem to really like the marsh thistles. Here's one on bugle. And so this plant is Devil's Bit scabious. So we're moving on to a fritillary now that doesn't use violets. A Devil's Bit scabious, very common, particularly later in the year. Well, you see the flowers later in the year, and this is the marsh fritillary. So again, this is a bit more a bit different on top, not quite so orange, a lot more patterned, browns and creams. Again, it's this is on marsh thistle again. These were actually taken in Cumbria, and Cumbria had they went extinct in Cumbria, and a number of years ago they had a butterfly conservation, did an official reintroduction, and they reared them in captivity from eggs and caterpillars, and they released them at quite a number of sites. Pretty butterfly. You see the variation in colour. I just put different ones in, partly for variation in colour and partly to get in some more different plants as well. So this is heath spotted orchid. And here we've got one on the milkmaid or cuckoo flower again. These are all at the same site in Cumbria. And that's the, oh, don't know why it done that, it's jumped two. That's the underside of the marsh fritillary. Completely different to the two pearl bordered fritillaries. And these are the eggs of the marsh fritillary. And this, again, it goes for safety in numbers. It lays them in clusters like this. And these are on the underside of the leaf. These are a different site in Cumbria where we actually went on a guided walk with a chap from Butterfly Conservation. This is at Finlandrig near Carlisle. And these are the caterpillars. So again, they make like this little web, and they hide in the web, so the webs cover as well, and they also are a bit spiky, and they change colour as they go through the different instars. And even long after they've gone or moved on to a fresh plant, you get these like webs in the grass with all the caterpillar frass or caterpillar poo. And the actual one main way that they monitor this species is they go in autumn, like August time, and they go onto sites and they actually count the number of these old webs, and that's the way that they actually monitor how the butterfly's doing as an adult, is how many of these webs they find. So this is not a great shot. This is ribwort plantain. It's the best shot I had of it because it's not the most exciting of plants, so it's not something I've taken loads of pictures of. But this is another fritillary, and this is the Glanville fritillary, and we're on the Isle of Wight now, which is the only UK site really, although there have been one or two, I think, spotted just on the mainland across from the Isle of Wight, across into Hampshire and possibly Dorset. But the Isle of Wight is classed as the main stronghold, and we're quite fortunate now because David's brother and his wife, they live on the Isle of Wight now, so we've got a good excuse to go down there. So this is a mating pair, obviously. The female is the bigger one. Usually with butterflies, the female is the bigger one of the two. I know with birds it's the other way around. You tend to have bigger with things, but butterflies, the females tend to be the bigger one. And the main reason for that is that they've got all the eggs to carry. So they've got a heavier load to carry. The females are often a lot less active as well. They don't fly about as much. It's more effort for them. So that's why if you see, like, say, the common blue, you see loads of the male common blues, but you don't see that many of the females. So here we've got a Glanville fritillary on pyramidal orchid. I just took that because it's a bit of a faded specimen, that, but it's quite nice with it, the way it's sat. And here we've got a mating pair of Glanville fritillaries where you can see both the upper and the underwing. So again, you can see this underwing is totally different to the other fritillaries we've looked at. I think most of the fritillaries are quite different on the underside, apart from the pearl bordered and the small pearl bordered are quite similar. And here we've got it on thrift. But I just quite like that shot where you've got both the upper and the hind wing. Very pretty thing. Now we've got mat grass. And this is actually on the Bradford Botany holiday to Tayside a couple of years ago. and we're on the path up Ben Lowers, and all this grassland either side, as far as you can see, right up to the coal just above the head of that chap with the red shirt on, quite a distance, flitting about all over in the grass. We had this species, and this is the mountain ringlet, and this is again a pretty rare species, certainly in this country. Quite difficult to see. To say it's a mountain species, it likes sun, so as soon as the sun goes in, it goes down into the grass, and trying to get a picture without any blades of grass across them is a real challenge. So this is actually one on the Bradford Botany holiday, and quite a few of us were busy taking pictures of it, because once they go down, if you see where they land and you get onto them, you can, they often sit quite still until the sun comes out again. This is one without any bits of grass and stuff. This is one taken a number of years ago in the Lake District. They have a few colonies in the Lake District. This is up above Haweswater on Kitstead Pike. And now we've got blue moorgrass. And this is the food plant for the Scotch Argus. And again, a Scottish species, some very quite widespread in particularly west coast of Scotland. But we do have the only we have the Yorkshire species in our Wharfedale Nats recording area. Around we've got Bastow Wood is the main site, and if you go there on a sunny day in August, you're pretty much guaranteed to see this species. We went there on the botany walk last year. And there's also a few other sites in Wharfedale, a couple of them on private land and a couple of them very small colonies. But it's a nice butterfly, a bit similar to the mountain ringlet. So here we've got the underside, we've got a mating pair, so you can see again the difference in male and female. This was taken at one of the private sites at Kettlewell. Oh, sometimes it's jumping on its own. And again, on the underside, this one is actually in Scotland. And again, this is Devil's Bit scabious again. Just, we are getting quite well through. I'm just aware of time a bit now. This is a Scotch Argus up in Scotland, near Blair Athol. And I took this because it's quite unusual to see the underside and be able to see both the forewing and the hindwing. And this is on heather, feeding on heather. You can see why most butterflies, when they go down to rest, they pull that forewing back behind the hindwing so you can't see it, and they just disappear when you've just got that brown showing. Oh, so this is purple moorgrass. Again, not the most exciting of things to look at, so we'll move on to the butterfly, which is much prettier. And this is a checkered skipper. It flies in late May, and it's found in Scotland, in an area, they always say within a 50-mile radius of Fort William. We've found it in quite a lot of different places in Scotland. We've found it in new 10k squares, new 1k squares. It's a lot more widespread, I think, than they thought. It's doing okay up there. Just another few different shots. It's quite a small butterfly. If you see it in flight, it's just like a moth. You wouldn't even think it was a butterfly. Here we've got a male and a female together. This was actually taken just a couple of years ago at a reserve called Alt Vuick, which is near Loch Arkaig, a little bit north of Fort William. And on the day that we did this walk, Neil Barrett, who was a Bradford Botany member and a Wharfedale Naturalist member, he'd been with his partner and they'd walked around this reserve, and unfortunately it was very dodgy signal up there and I didn't pick his message up, so we arrived there 10 minutes after they'd left, and we did the same walk. There's like a circular walk around this reserve, and we saw these, and Neil had been round and I think he'd seen one or two checkered skippers, but that was it, and he was very jealous when he saw this. And that's the underside. You get an idea of size by the size of the bluebell flowers. So this is horseshoe vetch, and we're back on the Isle of Wight again. And it's a fruit plant for a couple of the blues. This is the Adonis blue. Lovely, brilliant blue. I think it's more of a turquoise blue than the common blue. It can really look quite turquoise. This one was actually and then we've got the female. So again, you can still see that hint of blue on it, but it's a lot browner. And again, same as common blue female, the amount of blue varies. And that's on pyramidal orchid there. And this is an Adonis blue that we took at a site in Hampshire. At first we were like, it had these 2 black spots on its wings, and we were like, you know, oh, that's different, that's unusual. And oh, I kept following it, and it'd get up and go, and then it'd land on the path in front of us again, and I'd go after it. And eventually I managed to get a picture, and I've sent it to their Hampshire butterfly chap, and I'm not sure why it's got the black spots. One theory was that possibly when it was unfurling its wings, when it came out of the pupa, that there was a bit of damp on the wings still, and the wings stuck together a bit, and it's pulled some of the coloured cells off. But we're not really sure. On the Adonis blue, around that white fringe around the edge, the little black markings they run through into the white fringe. On the common blue, they don't. They don't go into the white fringe. And this is Chalkhill blue. Again, it feeds on horseshoe vetch. This is a Isle of Wight still. This is at Arreton Down. And we went one morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it hadn't really got very warm, but we were doing something else for the rest of the day. And we just had about an hour before we were going to head off with David's brother and his wife. And we were just stood there, and it just obviously warmed up a little bit, and we just looked, and they were all sitting on the grass, and everyone was face down like that, pointing down. That's a very similar shot, but I put it in because you can actually see the drops of dew on its wings. Ever so a much duskier. Oh, it's moved on again. It's a much duskier blue, the Chalkhill blue, much paler blue, but still ever so pretty. So common knapweed again, is feeding on that. I put that one in because you can see both the underwing and the upper wing. And that's the female. Can't really see any blue at all on that. I'm sure some of them do, but again, like I said before, because the females are not as active, we tend to not see them as often. That's a mating pair of Chalkhills. So the female, the underside of the female is much browner. So the brown one on the right is the female, and the more bluey coloured one is on the left is the male. And this is kidney vetch. This is on again on the Isle of Wight, on the Downs, not too far with. It keeps jumping on its own. Sorry. We're looking up round the headland of that white chalk there. You've got the Needles. We're up that side of the island, and this is the fruit. The kidney vetch is the fruit plant for the small blue. And again, underneath this, it's a little bit similar to the holly blue, like this more silvery blue. Not many markings on it, no orange on it, no markings around the edge. Here we've got one on Bird's Foot trefoil. And then this is one with the wings up, and it's the least blue of the blue butterflies. Not really particularly blue at all. I think this is probably a male on the kidney vetch, and this was actually taken in the garden of David's brother and his wife there. And I was looking at this. I thought it was a holly blue to start with because I could see the underside, and I never even, small blue never crossed my mind, even though they are pretty common on the Isle of Wight, because the garden's like sort of on the edge of Sandown. It does border on like a school playing field, and there's a golf course nearby, but there's no kidney vetch in the school grounds or on the golf course that I've ever seen. As far it must be a few miles from the nearest good areas of kidney vetch. But anyway, this little butterfly was there, and a holly blue actually came and landed fairly close by, and I got a comparison, and I said it's definitely small blue, that. And my sister-in-law Faye's saying, oh, is that a rare thing to have in your garden then? And I'm like, yes. And again, this is small blue, not blue at all, just the dark chocolate brown. This is a female. We do have small blue in Yorkshire, and there's been an unofficial reduction at Wharfedale, if any of you know that, just down the A1. I've never seen them there, but there are some colonies on the east coast as well. It's the smallest of the British butterflies. It is quite small, so pretty hard to spot in flight and pretty hard to follow and see where they land. Trying to think now. Here we've got blackthorn. We'll move on quite quickly. We're nearly at the end now. This is the brown hair streak, and this was taken at Gatebarrows in Cumbria, and we'd been told that we knew that they were there, that they'd been reintroduced unofficially, and we went for like an August bank holiday weekend a few years ago, and we went every day for 3 days, morning and afternoon, went up and down these rides where the blackthorn were. Never saw one, and we were just on out. We said a day we had to come home. We said we'll just go and sit and have our dinner somewhere amongst the blackthorn, and we'd barely sat down and this came and landed. It's a female. I got this picture. She laid an egg, she whizzed up in the treetops, and we never saw it again. But this is the male brown hair streak, and this was taken a couple of years ago in Dorset. We went on a guided walk with their branch of butterfly conservation, and I think it's a stunning butterfly, ever so pretty. And it just sat there. There was this massive group of about probably 15-20 people. We were everybody taking pictures with all the long lenses and the phones and anything and everything, and members of the public who weren't on the walk coming past and having a look and taking photos, and it just sat there for ages. I think it was still sat there when we all moved on. This is in Dorset again. This is an area just south of Lulworth Cove, and that's an area of tallgrass. And this is the Lulworth skipper. So it's much less orange than the small and large skipper. Some people say that the markings on its wing looks a bit like a ray of sunshine. It's not probably the best example, but it was. We went looking for this species in this area because I'm trying to see all of the British species in the UK with no time frame on it. We're just doing it over the years. So when we're in an area at the right time of year, we just go and see if we can see something, and sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. So we were really lucky to just see a couple of these. And the final species, so this is goat willow and sallows, willows in general, not just one species, not just goat willow, and it's the purple emperor. And it doesn't look very purple on that one, and it's just the way the light refracts off them. It is on a pile of dog poo, and that is actually one of the well-known things that it likes. It comes down to get minerals. It spends most of its life up in the treetops, doesn't often come down. And one of the things that it is well known for landing on is dog poo, but it also, people make all sorts of concoctions of Japanese fish paste and rotten fruit and all sorts of things to try and encourage it. We'll move away from the dog poo. So this is one where you can see the purple on its wings as well. Lovely butterfly, big butterfly. That's the underside without any of the purple on it. Very attractive underside as well. The reason I've put this in, or one of the reasons, is this species is gradually working its way north, and it is seen now not too far south of Yorkshire. And there was actually a prize offered for the first person to see a purple emperor in Yorkshire, and that prize has been claimed by one was seen and accepted as being genuine, and the person claimed their prize. I think it was a framed picture of a purple emperor taken by someone. But it is a species that, particularly any younger members, this could be in our area in our lifetimes. It's sort of probably heading to South Yorkshire first, but I mean there's plenty of woods with lots of it like sort of rides in woods with the willows. No reason why it shouldn't eventually get here. It's a big strong butterfly, quite a strong flyer, so one to look out for in the future, but I don't think we'll be seeing one in Wharfedale anytime soon, unfortunately. So this is it's the second last shot, but this is the last butterfly shot. This is on the Isle of Wight, and it's on ragwort, and it's a common blue and a chalk-hill blue sat together. They both had, when I first found them, they both had the wings shut, and I took loads of pictures, and I'm waiting. I'm saying, oh, come on, open your wings, open your wings. And eventually the common blue did this. And then before the chalk-hill decided to open his wings, one of them flew off, and that was that. So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've maybe learned a few ID tips. If anybody's wants to know where to see species, not just in our area, but anywhere in the UK, I'm quite happy for people to see me. I'm at practically every indoor meeting as well. This is the only photograph not taken by me. This was taken by my sister-in-law, Nyree Fearnley, and people often ask of a book that, you know, to buy. This is just quite a small book. You can fit it in your rucksack. It shows all the different stages, so it shows pictures of the egg, the caterpillar, the pupa and the adult, and it tells you what months of the year you're likely to see it in. And I got Faye to send this because hers is a more up-to-date version than ours. We bought her this a year or two since because she's got really keen on butterflies now, and they've, like I say, they've got the wildlife area in the garden. It's not a massive garden, it's only quite a small garden, but they've got that patch that had the kidney vetch. So I thought, I don't know if we might possibly leave that slide up while the questions are on, so if anybody wants to get a copy, you can get one on like Amazon or anywhere for just over £10. It's not an expensive book either, which is another thing. So thank you. I'll go back to James, I think, see if there's any questions.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions and a couple of observations. Keith says the best place for purple hair streak is Shipley Glen. Eye level views looking at the oaks from the rocks at the top.
Right, yeah.
And also there's a small blue colony as opposed to a small blue colony, I presume, on a grassy bank in the village of Fareham on the way to Staveley Nature Reserve. Okay. Question from Richard. I've a white letter hair streak in my Otley garden just below the chevin on ragwort. Is this unusual?
It's not particularly unusual. I mean, white letter hair streak, although they do live up in the treetops, I've found that white letter comes down a lot more readily than purple hair streak. And I've had one or two people had two new sites in Ilkley this year, and one person took an absolute stunning photo of white letter hair streak mating. We had one that came down to the ground at Sun Lane on our butterfly walk, which was amazing, and it actually stayed, and like 15 people were or more were crowding around it, and it sat there. So they will come down, but it's not a common butterfly. Now, if anybody does see one, I'd love to have your record for it. Even if it's from last year, you can still send it to me. We still add it to our database. It's a funny thing because the purple hair streak and the white letter, it's how common are they? Because they spend most of their life in the treetops, we're not quite sure how common they are. I mean, you look at lots of trees looking for them. We looked at a lot of oak trees last year, and we found a couple of sites around Linley and Dot Park and Farnley, but white letter, I've only ever seen them in singles coming down. I've seen them twice at Sun Lane. Once was like last year when we saw it on the butterfly walk, and I've only ever seen one other there. I've seen one at the farm that I said, and that was it. And that was like in a field that I used to go to like every day because our dogs were there, and you know, we'd go feed them and take them out, and always looking on nice days. So it's certainly not a common sight, and it's a really nice thing to see.
And all records are good records, right?
All records are good records, yeah. I mean, some people say, oh, you know, what records do you want? Is there certain species that you're particularly interested in? And yes, like the rarer ones, it is nice to know the distribution and numbers and what have you. But the common species, we need to know how they're faring like in the future. So what's common now might not be common. And I mean, I'm sure I haven't mentioned it tonight because I'll be mentioning it a bit more at the recorders evening, but you know, what happened with butterflies last year, and lots of people have been saying, you know, about how few butterflies have seen, oh, it's terrible. Is it global warming? Is this like, you know, is this just, you know, are they just going down forever, and you know, all that. And so, you know, these, you know, records are really good for looking into the future for climate change and biodiversity. And so any record, but I mean, obviously, you know, you don't want people to feel it's a burden. So like, you know, whatever people are comfortable sending in, some people send in every single thing they've seen, some people just send in a single butterfly. Like if they saw a white letter in the garden, they might say, oh, that's a bit unusual, I'll send it in. You know, anything's welcome.
Excellent. Couple more. Thinking of going to the Isle of Wight this year, what's the best time to see a glanville?
Probably late May. I think we went, I have seen them in early June. We went with the Bradford Botany about 9 or 10 years ago now, and I think we saw single one, and we were thinking, oh, like early June, and we went down to the Isle of Wight, I think the first time in sort of early June, sort of June time, early mid-June, and I think we only saw one, and then we went the year after a bit earlier, sort of into late May, and we saw quite a lot of fresh ones. I can look up the exact dates, and I don't know how to get, I'm not sure how to get out of this presentation now.
Last one for you.
That's better.
What camera and lens do you use?
So I actually use a bridging camera. The one I've got at the moment is a Canon PowerShot. So I don't never change the lenses on it. The brilliant thing with the bridging camera for butterflies and other insects is it's got a really good optical zoom. So the one I've got now, it's got 45 times optical zoom. I was using a Nikon before that, a Nikon Coolpix P90 that had 24 times zoom. Optical zoom, because once you get into the digital zoom you just like lose your quality. But I went for the Canon PowerShot because it's got 45 times optical zoom, and we'd like go off and walk in the hills, and you don't want to be lugging a massive camera. You haven't time to be changing lenses and things if you know they're active, you know, active species.
That's everything from the questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think it's my turn to say a few words and to say thank you to Nyree. That was a fantastic talk. It really ticked my 3 E's, which is entertain, infuse, and educate. I think I agree with you. I think green hair streak is a beautiful butterfly. Yeah, it's like look forward to seeing it up on Burley Moor, close to where we live. You're fantastic for all the ID tips. The photographs were fantastic. You'll be very pleased to know we had almost 100 people tuning in, well, 100 people people viewing it, and probably a lot more than that because often it's more than one person viewing it at the same time. You didn't mention your pocket guide you often gives out, the pocket guide butterflies of Yorkshire. I don't know if people can see what I'm holding up there or not. That's a very good little booklet. It contains 40 butterflies for Yorkshire. Nothing more to say really, apart from the fact that we've got another talk in 2 weeks' time, actually in Christchurch, this time by Professor Johnny Gray, and he's looking at the rivers for wildlife, and his title it's called let's look it up on the thing here if I can find it. It's Righting River Habitat Wrongs for Wildlife, and if you're around in 2 weeks' time, it'd be lovely to see you. And all I can say now is thank you to Nyree and also Tate for sort of organising the webinar, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the near future. Bye for now.
Ian, I do have some of those little books that I can bring to the recorders evening.
That'd be great.
We do have some left. I mean, we're keeping some for like the butterfly walks that we do in summer for ID, but we've still got a reasonable number, so I'll bring a few to the recorders evening.
Perhaps
I think quite a few members have got one now, I think, but
it's a great little booklet to carry in your sort of rucksack. I mean, by the time you've got a birding book, a botany book, it's a slim little thing to put in there, really. It's doesn't contain everything, but it's pretty good. Okay, I'll say goodbye from Tate, Nyree, and myself. Look forward to seeing you very soon. Bye for now.